15 people whose real nationality will shock you.
Number 15.
Mel Gibson. The now controversial Mel Gibson was once one of the biggest stars in all of Hollywood. When he burst on the scene as the lead role in Mad Max, the world fell in love with the Aussie. But though he grew up in Australia and has an Australian accent, he was actually born in the United States. Gibson was born on January 3, 1956, in Peekskill, New York, to an Irish mother and American father. In order for his brother to avoid being drafted in the Vietnam War, the family moved to Ireland for a short period of time, and then settled in Australia, where Mel would grow up and develop his acting skills. After starring in several Australian films, he moved to Los Angeles and became an award-winning actor and director.
Number 14.
Hugo Weaving. Hugo Weaving is best known for his roles of Agent Smith in the Matrix trilogy and as Elrond in the Lord of the Rings saga. If you hear him talk in interviews, he has a distinct Australian accent, so it may surprise you that he was actually born in the city of Ibadan, in Nigeria. Both of his parents were English, and because of his father's career as a seismologist, they moved around the world frequently, living in England, South Africa, and Australia throughout his childhood. Eventually, they settled in Australia, where Weaving studied drama and broke into television in the Australian TV show Bodyline. He went on to star in several Australian films before moving on to big-budget Hollywood roles. And though he frequently has to travel to Los Angeles for work, he still calls Sydney, Australia, home.
Number 13.
Emma Watson. Emma Watson is famous for her roles as Belle in the live-action remake of Beauty and the Beast, and as Hermione Granger in the Harry Potter film series. Because of being known as Hermione, most people think she was born and raised in England, but she actually was born in Paris, France. Her parents are both English lawyers who were working in Paris during the time of her birth. Watson lived in France until she was 5 years old, but when her parents divorced, she moved with her mother to England. There she developed her love of acting, performing in several plays until being discovered at the age of 10 and earning her role in the Harry Potter movies.
Number 12.
Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis is probably best known for his role as John McClane in the Die Hard movies, and portraying all types of gritty American heroes. Because of this, you would think that he hails from some tough working town on the East Coast, but he was actually born in the town of Kassel, which at the time was part of West Germany. His father was an American soldier stationed in Germany, while his mother was a German native. 2 years after his birth, they moved back to his father's home state of New Jersey, where he was raised and developed his tough guy style of acting. After years of scraping by, working odd jobs such as being a private investigator in New York and Los Angeles, he got his big break when he was cast in the lead role of the television show Moonlighting, which would earn him several awards. Using this success, he launched his long film career with Die Hard in 1988.
Number 11.
Natalie Portman. Natalie Portman has been acting since she was 11 and became an instant screen darling with her role as Padme Amidala in the Star Wars prequel trilogy. You may not realize it from her American accent in interviews, but she was actually born in Jerusalem, Israel. Her father is a native Israeli, while her mother is an American, and the two met while living in the United States. Eventually, her mother moved to Israel to be with her father. They were married, and Natalie was born in 1981. They lived in Israel until she was 3 years old, then moved to the United States, living in Washington, D.C., Connecticut, and Long Island, New York, respectively. While in New York, she broke into film with the movie Leon the Professional and has since skyrocketed to be one of the most famous women in Hollywood. Portman still maintains dual citizenship in Israel and the U.S., and though she says she loves America, she feels that Israel is her true home.
Number 10.
Tommy Lee. As the eccentric drummer for Motley Crue, one of the biggest hair metal bands of the 80s, Tommy Lee was a central figure in the Sunset Strip's rock and roll party scene. Tommy Lee on the surface seems about as Californian as one can get, but he actually was born in Athens, Greece, a city steeped in ancient history. Lee's mother is native to Greece and met his father while he was stationed there with the U.S. Army. Although his upbringing assuredly had a large dose of Greek culture, he only lived there until he was 1 year old. That's when his family moved to California, where he formed his first band in his late teens. He met the guitarist Nikki Sixx around this time, and they would eventually form Motley Crue, taking the scene by storm, with songs like Dr. Feelgood and Shout at the Devil.
Number 9.
Mila Kunis. American sweetheart Mila Kunis, famous for her role as Jackie in That 70s Show, and as the voice of Meg in Family Guy, is not so American. Her birth name was Melina Markovna Kunis, and she was born in Chernivtsi, USSR, which is now part of Ukraine, in 1983. Both of her parents were Russian natives, but ended up immigrating to the United States when she was 7 years old, in order to allow their children to have more opportunities and to freely practice Judaism, as the religion was subject to persecution in their home country. Not knowing any English upon the move, Mila struggled at first, and then started to flourish with the language. taking acting classes at the Beverly Hills studio, where she met her manager. She moved from parts in commercials and bit roles in soap operas to the sitcom That 70s Show in 1998. The role would set her up for a successful career in television and film for the foreseeable future. To this day, Kunis and her family all use Russian as their main language at home.
Number 8.
Glenn Howerton. The star of the deviously funny It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia seems as American as they come, but he had an extremely worldly upbringing, as his father was a fighter pilot. He was born in Japan when his father was stationed there, and spent most of his childhood bouncing back and forth between Alabama, England, and South Korea. Because of his father's career, Howerton almost studied aerospace engineering at Auburn University, but went with his true passion of acting. He studied at the highly esteemed Juilliard School of the Arts in New York City, and after playing the main role in the failed sitcom That 80s Show, found success in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Number 7.
Vivien Leigh. Legendary actress Vivien Leigh is best known for her role as the Southern Belle Scarlett O'Hara in the classic Gone with the Wind, so you might not believe that some of the producers originally had doubts about whether or not she could play the role, as she was too British. Despite her having an English upbringing, she was actually born in Darjeeling, India, and lived there until she was 6 years old. Her mother was of Irish stock, but born in India, and her father was born in Scotland. They met when he was working in India, which was then a colony of the United Kingdom. Leigh went on to be raised in various boarding schools and study acting in England, where she honed her craft in the theater. Through her successes on the stage, she transitioned to film, where she made a lasting impact on Hollywood.
Number 6.
Keanu Reeves. It's easy to picture Keanu Reeves as having been a California surfer dude, like he portrayed in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, his whole life. But his background is diverse, to say the least. Keanu was born in Beirut, Lebanon, in 1964. Fell in love with acting. She was cast in several Australian films and television shows, until making her American screen debut in Days of Thunder.
Number 3.
Joaquin Phoenix. The enigmatic Joaquin Phoenix won over critics with his complex characterizations of riveting figures such as Johnny Cash in Walk the Line. If you hear him speak in interviews, you'd think he, like Cash, was a soft-spoken American man. So it is crazy when you find out that he was actually born in Puerto Rico. Technically a territory of the United States, the small Caribbean island has its own unique Latin culture, so one could guess being from there has added unique depth to his personality. Though his parents were originally from the United States, the Phoenix family traveled for nearly a decade as part of a religious cult called Children of God throughout South and Central America. They left the cult and returned to the American mainland when Joaquin was 4 years old. Upon their return, in order to help make money for their family, Joaquin and his brothers and sisters turned to street performing. While performing, they were discovered by an agent, and all 5 of them broke into Hollywood, doing commercials and television at first. Then Joaquin and his brother River got roles starring in feature films. Because of his family's time in South America, Joaquin still feels attached to it, and frequently takes hiatuses from acting to travel there.
Number 2.
Gene Simmons. As the devilish bass player from one of the biggest rock bands of all time, Kiss, Gene Simmons epitomizes the idea of selling your soul for rock and roll. So you might be surprised that Simmons was born and spent a large part of his childhood in the Holy Land of Israel. He was born to Hungarian parents who were part of the mass exodus of Jews who left Europe after World War II. When he was 8 years old, his father and mother split up, and he left Israel with his mother to live in New York City. In New York, he discovered rock and roll through the Beatles and became fixated on becoming just like them. After stints with several bands, he broke through with Kiss and began his life of stardom.
Number 1.
Freddie Mercury. Freddie Mercury is known for having one of, if not the best singing voices of all time. As the frontman for the band Queen, he achieved legend status with songs like Bohemian Rhapsody and We Will Rock You. Everything about the band was steeped in English culture, but Mercury's songwriting and vocals always seemed like they were from another planet. So it's not surprising to find out that he was born in the African country of Zanzibar, now known as Tanzania, which compared to England might as well be another planet. Though it was a protectorate of the United Kingdom at the time, his birth name was Farrokh Bulsara, and his parents were practicing Zoroastrians of Persian descent. Until moving to England at the age of 17, Mercury spent different periods living in Zanzibar and India. He loved music from an early age, forming several bands that incorporated the musical traditions of his unique upbringing, his classical training, and love of rock and roll. When he moved to England, he attended art school, and after graduating, formed the band that would become Queen. The band would go on to be one of the most successful rock bands of the 70s and 80s.
Subscribe for more videos.